October 3rd, 2023, 5:47 a.m. Kupiansk sector, Kharkiv Oblast. Russian offensive begins. Fresh mobilized units. 3 brigades, 15,000 soldiers. Objective, advance 10 kilometers. Recapture Kupiansk. Strategic rail hub, lost during September 2022 Ukrainian counteroffensive. Russian command wants it back. Orders are clear. Advance regardless of cost. This is attritional warfare, not maneuver warfare, not combined arms brilliance, just mass, just willingness to accept casualties, just grinding forward meter by meter, trading bodies for territory. Ukrainian defenders are prepared, fortified position, artillery pre-registered, knowing this offensive is coming. Weeks of preparation. Russian forces advance anyway, into prepared defenses, into kill zones, into meat grinder. This continues for weeks, slowly, bloodily, expensively. The offensive progresses. Russian units attack in waves. First week, advance 2 kilometers, cost 800 casualties. Second week, advance 3 kilometers, cost 1,200 casualties. Third week, advance 2.5 kilometers, cost 100 casualties. Fourth week, advance 1.5 kilometers, cost 900 casualties. Fifth week, advance 1 kilometer, cost 1,000 casualties. Pattern is clear. Progress is steady but slow. Casualties are constant. Exchange ratio heavily favors Ukrainian defenders. Russians lose 3 to other 4 soldiers for every Ukrainian casualty. This is defensive advantage. This is prepared positions. This is competent. Russian forces continue anyway. Because orders, because political pressure to show progress, because willingness to accept casualties that would stop Western militaries immediately. At 11:47 p.m. November 7th, 35 days after offensive began, Russian forces have advanced 10 kilometers total, captured several villages, improved positions marginally, cost approximately 5,000 casualties killed and wounded. Ukrainian defenders lost fewer, perhaps 200 to 1,500. Exchange ratio is catastrophic for Russians, but advance achieved objective distance, 10 kilometers gained, 5,000 casualties paid. Is this success? Depends on perspective. Russian command claims victory. Territory captured. Objectives achieved. Reality is grimmer. 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers is World War I casualty rate, not modern warfare. This is grinding attrition. This is what happens when military prioritizes territorial gains over casualty preservation. This is Kupiansk offensive. This is Russian warfare 2023. Grinding, bloody, expensive, continuing. This is IronBullet. And what happened at Kupiansk wasn't modern combined arms warfare, was industrial scale attrition, where Russian forces traded bodies for meters, where 5,000 casualties bought 10 kilometers, where exchange ratios were catastrophically unfavorable but advance continued anyway, where Ukrainian defenders fought professionally but couldn't stop mass completely, where Russian willingness to accept casualties exceeded Ukrainian ability to inflict them with available forces. This is brutal arithmetic of attritional warfare. The question isn't whether Russians advanced. They did. Question is why continue offensive with casualty rates that would stop any Western military. What calculation makes 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers acceptable? And what this reveals about Russian military's fundamental approach to warfare, where human life is a resource to be expended, achieving territorial objectives regardless of cost. Official Russian statements during offensive, triumphant daily. Liberating settlements, advancing steadily. Videos showing captured villages, destroyed Ukrainian equipment. No mention of casualties. Ever. No acknowledgement that 5,000 Russians were killed or wounded. just confident statements about successful operations. Reality was very different. Casualties were catastrophic. Progress was minimal. But officially, everything is successful. This disconnect between statements and reality is standard. Propaganda serves political needs. Facts serve military analysis. These are different universes. Ukrainian statements, grimly realistic. Heavy fighting continues, inflicting significant losses. Acknowledging Russian advances, not hiding territorial losses, but emphasizing casualty asymmetry. Russian losses are multiples of Ukrainian. This is true. Doesn't change that Russians are advancing, slowly, expensively. But advancing, Ukrainian statements acknowledge both. Territory lost, enemy casualties heavy. Both true, both important. Honesty is unusual in warfare. Ukraine demonstrates it consistently. Stay with me, because the detail that explains Kupiansk, why 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers, is going to show you that Russian military used Soviet-era tactics. Mass assault, accept casualties, advance regardless. This works when have numerical superiority and political system that accepts casualties. Russia has both. Democratic systems can't accept 500 casualties weekly for marginal gains. Russian system can. This is asymmetry, not technological, not tactical, political and cultural. Russian military can sustain operations that would collapse Western militaries through domestic pressure. Kupiansk proves this. 5,000 casualties, 10 kilometers. Offensive continues. No domestic pressure stops it. No political cost changes calculus. Just continues grinding. This is Russian military's dark advantage. Can expend humans Western systems can't. Makes rational retreat irrational sometimes. Makes continued offensive rational despite catastrophic costs. This is Kupiansk. This is Russian warfare. Let's establish what Kupiansk offensive actually was. Week by week, casualty by casualty. Kupiansk sector, strategic rail hub. Captured by Russia March 2022. Liberated by Ukraine September 2022. Russian forces wanted back. October 2023. Launch offensive. 3 brigades. Fresh mobilized troops. Minimal training. Adequate equipment. Orders are advanced 10 kilometers. Recapture lost territory. Cost is secondary concern. This is critical. Cost is secondary. Territory is primary. This calculus determines everything. Makes catastrophic casualties acceptable if territory is gained. Ukrainian defense, prepared positions, multiple defensive lines, artillery support, competent soldiers, orders, hold positions, inflict maximum casualties, delay enemy advance, preserve own forces, accept territorial losses if necessary, but make expensive. This is defensive doctrine. Can hold everywhere against overwhelming numbers. Make advancing so costly enemy can sustain. Ukrainian forces execute this professionally. Russian forces advance anyway. Through casualties, through determination, through mass, week by week progression. The grinding. Week 1, Oct 3 to 9. Russian assault begin. 3 axes. Ukrainian artillery fires continuously. Pre-registered coordinates. Accurate. Lethal. Russian units take heavy casualties immediately. Advance anyway. First defensive line is contested. Some positions taken. Cost 800 casualties. Gain 2 kilometers. Ukrainian losses 200 approximately. Exchange ratio 4-1 favoring defenders. This ratio continues throughout offensive. Russians accepted. Continue attacking. Week 2, Oct 10 to 16. Second defensive line engaged. Fighting intensifies. Russian forces commit reserves. Ukrainian defenders fight professionally. Each position costs attackers heavily, but positions fall eventually. When overwhelmed, when ammunition runs low, when casualties mount, Ukrainian forces withdraw to next defensive line. Professional retreat, most forces preserved. Second week, 1,200 Russian casualties. 3 kilometers gained. Ukrainian losses, 300. Exchange ratio maintained. Russians continue. Week 3, August 1723. Pattern established. Russian forces assault, take heavy casualties. Advance slowly. Ukrainian forces defend, inflict disproportionate casualties. Withdraw when necessary. This is attritional warfare. Neither side can stop it. Russians can stop Ukrainian fires from killing. Ukrainians can stop Russian mass from advancing. Third week, 1,100 casualties. 2.5 kilometers. Exchange ratio still 4-1. Still unacceptable for Western military. Still acceptable for Russian command apparently. Week 4, August 24-30. Russian offensive is slowing. Units are depleted. Casualties cumulative. Effectiveness declining. Still attacking. Orders don't change. Advance regardless. Fourth week, 900 casualties. 1.5 kilometers. Slower progress. Same casualties. Efficiency declining. Offensive continues anyway. Because political pressure demands visible progress, regardless of cost. Week 5, August 31, Navi 7, final week. Russian forces are exhausted, depleted, still attacking. Minimal gains, maximum effort. Fifth week, 1,000 casualties. 1 kilometer gained. This is least efficient week. Most costly per meter. Offensive continues because orders demand it. Eventually offensive pauses, not stops. Pauses, regroup, replace casualties. Prepare next phase. This is pattern, attack, bleed, pause, repeat. Kupiansk offensive, 5 weeks, 5,000 casualties, 10 kilometers. This is Russian warfare. Now the analysis, why this happened, what it means. Attrition as doctrine. Russian military fights. Attritional warfare by choice sometimes. By necessity always. Can conduct modern combined arms maneuver warfare effectively. Institutional failures prevent it. Doctrine defaults to attrition. Mass assault. Accept casualties. Advance through determination. This worked in World War II. Works now differently. More expensively. But works when have numerical advantage and casualty acceptance. Kupiansk proves attrition still functions. Not efficient, just functional. Casualty acceptance asymmetry. Western militaries can't accept 500 casualties weekly for 2 kilometers. Domestic politics prevent it. Russian system has no such constraint. Casualties are reported minimally. Families are compensated quietly. Political pressure is suppressed. This allows Russian military to continue operations Western forces couldn't sustain politically. This is asymmetric advantage, dark advantage, but advantage enables grinding offensives that are militarily irrational but politically sustainable. Kupiansk exemplifies this. Numerical superiority compensating for tactical inferiority. Russian forces fought less effectively than Ukrainian defenders. Exchange ratio proves this. 4 Russian casualties per Ukrainian. This is tactical inferiority. But Russian forces had numerical superiority. 15,000 attackers versus perhaps 5,000 defenders in sector. 3-1 advantage. This compensates for tactical weakness. Allows advance despite casualties. Math works. Barely, expensively, but works. 3-1 attacking force accepting 4-1 casualties advances slowly. This is Kupiansk arithmetic. Ukrainian defensive competence. Ukrainian forces fought professionally. Prepared positions, accurate fires, tactical withdrawals preserving force. Exchange ratio heavily favorable. This is competent defensive warfare. But competent defense against overwhelming numbers is delaying action, not indefinite hold. Ukrainian forces delayed, inflicted casualties, eventually withdrew. This is professional, not failure. Against Russian mass, competent defense means inflicting disproportionate casualties, then withdrawing. Ukrainian forces did this successfully. Strategic value versus cost. 10 kilometers near Kupiansk has minimal strategic value, doesn't threaten Ukrainian logistics, doesn't enable further operations significantly, just territory. Symbolic perhaps, strategically marginal. Cost was 5,000 casualties. This math doesn't work strategically. Works politically maybe. Shows progress. Justifies offensive. But militarily, 5,000 for marginal territorial gain is catastrophic exchange. Russian command accepted this. Reveals priority is political optics over military efficiency. 3 questions from the beginning. Time to answer them. Why continue offensive with casualty rates that would stop Western military? Political pressure demanding visible progress. Russian political system accepts casualties, Western systems can't. Cultural differences regarding human life value in military operations. Institutional pressure to show offensive success regardless of cost. All combined. Result: offensive continues despite catastrophic casualties. 5,000 for 10 kilometers is acceptable to Russian command, unacceptable to Western command. This asymmetry enables Russian offensives that seem irrational by Western standards, are rational within Russian political military context. What calculation makes 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers acceptable? Political calculation, not military. 10 kilometers proves offensive capacity, shows Russian military advancing, provides propaganda victory. Costs are military. Benefits are political. Russian system values political benefits over military costs. This calculation is alien to Western military thinking. Standard for Russian explains continued offensives despite unfavorable exchange ratios. Political needs outweigh casualty concerns. Kupiansk offensive exemplifies this calculation. What does this reveal about Russian military's approach? Fundamentally attritional. Values territorial gain over casualty preservation. Accepts exchange ratios that would collapse Western operations. Sustains offensives through mass and casualty acceptance. Can fight modern combined arms warfare effectively. Defaults to mass assault tactics. This works when have numerical superiority and political system accepting casualties. Russia has both. This enables grinding offensives achieving marginal gains at catastrophic costs. Kupiansk's template will repeat elsewhere. This is Russian military approach fundamentally. Attrition, mass, casualty acceptance. Continuing, the lesson from Kupiansk is that attritional warfare still functions when one side accepts casualties, other side can't inflict fast enough with available forces. Russian forces took 5,000 casualties advancing 10 kilometers. Catastrophic by any reasonable standard. But offensive achieved territorial objective. This is success within Russian calculus. Would be failure within Western calculus. Reveals fundamental difference in military philosophy. Western militaries preserve forces, accept territorial losses if necessary. Russian military does opposite, accept catastrophic casualties, preserve territorial gains. Both approaches function within their systems, produce different results. Kupiansk shows Russian approach works, expensively, bloodily, but works when system supports continuation despite costs. This is IronBullet. We analyze battles that define wars. Kupiansk offensive defines Russian military approach 2023, a grinding attrition, mass assault, casualty acceptance, 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers, would stop Western offensive immediately. Didn't stop Russian. Offensive continues. This reveals fundamental asymmetry, not technological, political and cultural. Russian system accepts casualties enabling operations. Western systems couldn't sustain. This is dark advantage. Makes rational operations by Western standards appear irrational to Russians and vice versa. Kupiansk exemplifies this. 5 weeks, 5,000 casualties, 10 kilometers, offensive forces. Will resume, pattern repeats. This is Russian warfare. Grinding, attritional, continuing regardless of cost. Understanding this matters, because can't counter enemy without understanding how they calculate costs and benefits differently. Subscribe to IronBullet, because in modern warfare, understanding enemy calculus matters as much as tactical capabilities. Kupiansk offensive seems irrational. 5,000 casualties for 10 kilometers. But within Russian political military context is rational, shows progress, proves offensive capability. Political benefits outweigh military costs in Russian calculation. Western militaries calculate opposite. This asymmetry determines how war is fought. Russian forces can sustain grinding offensives, Western forces politically can't. Ukrainian forces fight within Western framework. We preserve forces, accept territorial losses if necessary, inflict disproportionate casualties. This is professional. But against enemy, accepting casualties to advance sometimes isn't enough. Kupiansk proves this. Ukrainian forces fought brilliantly, 4-to-1 exchange ratio. Russians advanced anyway, through mass, through determination, through accepting casualties. This is brutal reality. Understanding different military cultures, calculate costs differently is critical. Kupiansk teaches this. 5,000 casualties, 10 kilometers. Both sides claim success, both partially right. This is modern warfare complexity. 5 weeks, 15,000 Russians attacking, 5,000 defending Ukrainians, 5,000 Russian casualties, 1,500 Ukrainian casualties, 10 kilometers gained, several villages captured, minimal strategic value, maximum political value for Russia. This is Kupiansk offensive. This is attritional warfare 2023. Not sophisticated, not efficient, just grinding. Russian forces attack, Ukrainian forces defend, casualties mount, territory changes hands slowly. This continues, because Russian system accepts continuation, because Ukrainian forces can't stop mass completely with available forces, because war is fought differently by different militaries with different political constraints. Kupiansk exemplifies this. Grinding, bloody, continuing. This is how wars are fought when one side values territory over lives and has political systems supporting that calculus. Understanding this is necessary, because can't end war without understanding why it continues despite costs. That's improhibitive. Kupiansk explains Russian warfare, grinding attrition, casualty acceptance, territorial focus. This continues. This is reality. This is Kupiansk. Real battles, real tactics, real consequences. Stay informed.